On January 12, 2011, I became the mother of a feisty, stubborn, super smart, well of energy baby girl. On January 19, 2011, I became a motherless child. Losing my mother was the most painful experience I ever had. Sometimes the pain of it snatches the air right out of my body and brings me to my knees. My mother was my best friend, and I miss her dearly. But our relationship was not always a good one. The childhood me struggled to find love in my mother's eyes, and I have the scars to show for it. Unfortunately, some of the lessons I learned paralyze me when I think about my daughter. When I was in 6th grade, my mother made an attempt at talking to me about sex. It was awkward for both of us. For her, because of the fear and anxiety that comes with being a mom talking to her daughter about sex. And for me, because at that stage in my life, my trust with my mother was already broken. By the age of 9, I was accustomed to my mother using words to hurt me. It wasn't uncommon for me to hear that I was dumb and fat, not measuring up to the willowy white girls in my class. It was hard enough to be one of only 2 black girls in my class. And my mother's criticisms of me made it even more miserable at times. I knew my mother loved me, but she didn't know how to really communicate what she wanted to say. She wanted to say, Liddell, focus in class. I know you're smart, but you have to prove that to the teachers. I know that she wanted to say, Liddell, I struggle with weight a lot in my life, and I don't want that for you. So let's make good food choices together, so that you don't have to deal with the disappointments I face living in my body. It took me years to understand what she really meant. But at that time, all it made me feel was insecure, fat, and inadequate. My mother's words made me feel ashamed. So having a conversation with her about sex was the last thing I wanted to do. But after she gave me her spiel, she said, so if you ever have any sexual feelings, know that you can come talk to me. So have you ever had any feelings? I could have died right there on the spot. I mean, it was my mother talking to me about, sex. A war started in my brain as I tried to decide whether I should trust what she was telling me and be open with her, or save myself and keep my mouth shut. So, yeah, Mom, I've had some of those feelings you speak of, I say with a shy smile on my face, waiting for her to tell me what to do next. But that didn't come. What happened next was she asked me what feelings I was talking about and how I could possibly have those feelings. I was called a whore and a slew of other things I would never say to another female. And it was that day that the budding woman in me was shamed and shut down. What I learned from my mother was that sex was dirty. You couldn't convince me that it was something that God created for a husband and wife to actually enjoy, because according to her, it was something that you just didn't do. You love God? You don't have sex. You're a good girl. You don't even think about it. You don't feel attraction. You pray away chemistry. And if a boy even looks your way, you just keep right on walking, because they only want one thing from you, and that's sex. And sex is bad. I was never taught the beautiful side of it that I experienced as a wife. I was taught it was a very dirty thing that only very dirty girls did. As I grew older, that conversation my mother and I had when I was in 6th grade continued to create a painful separation between us. It didn't allow me to go to her for anything, not for the time that I lost my virginity, nor for the time that I was raped. I experienced my first miscarriage in her house, but without her. And years later, it would anger me that it never occurred to my mother to ask herself why, At such a tender young age, I knew about sexual feelings, and perhaps the question she should have asked is who had been touching me inappropriately. For a long time, I couldn't forgive her for that, and I was angry that I had to deal with it all on my own. And now that I have my own daughter, I want nothing more than to protect her from everything. I don't want her to grow into a girl that feels disgusted about the natural changes in her own body. I wasn't taught that my body was beautiful and sacred. So how do I teach that lesson to my baby? I know I have a few years before I have to deal with this, but the time will eventually come when we have to talk to our baby girl about love and God's plan for us, about body changes, hormones, and oh dear God, boys. Oh God. But the way it's presented to her could be the difference between us having an open, trusting relationship where she knows she can come to me for anything, and her dealing with it on her own, feeling lonely, isolated, unpretty, and disposable, like I did. In time, I learned that the beauty in growing up is that you realize that your parents are humans, and the lessons they teach have a personal, sometimes painful history of their own. My mother and I eventually got through the storm and became the best of friends. But the scars that were created still flare up in me sometimes. I still struggle with not feeling dirty. Yes, even though I'm married. The thought creeps in every once in a blue moon, but I lean on my faith to carry me through and know that I got this.